This is the part where most people quit. Not because they're weak, but because no one told them that resistance is sacred. In this session, we meet the fire, the discomfort, the doubt, the tension that rises after the intention is set. But here's the truth. This isn't the breakdown. It's the turn of the page. Stay with me till the end, and we'll walk through the psychology, the astrology, and the practices that can help you transform resistance into your next level of alignment. Hello, my name is Diana Rogerson, and this is part 2 of Rooted Rebirth, a 4-part video journey aligned with the lunar cycle, created to help you gently reconnect with your emotional truth, shift old patterns, and begin building a foundation of safety from the inside out. In part 1, we anchored into emotional safety. We listened to the waters. We softened. We remember that the first step in any transformation is creating a safe enough inner sanctuary to hold the change we seek. Now the energy shifts. We've moved into the first quarter moon, and with it comes friction. This is the fire energy, the spark, the tension, the will to move forward despite resistance. And here's the truth most people don't tell you. Resistance is not the enemy. It is the threshold. This phase invites us to meet our inner blocks, not as failures, but as initiations. Not as signs to stop, but as proof that change is happening. Fire is the element of alchemy. It is ruled by will, transformation, and discomfort. It's no coincidence that this moment can feel agitating or full of doubt, especially if you've recently opened something tender. The first quarter moon presses on the cracks. It says, you planted something. Will you protect it? And in this moment, the nervous system often protects. The ego tightens. All patterns rise. Why? Because something new is trying to take root. And the psyche will test that growth to see if it's real. The nervous system is not designed for happiness. It's designed for survival. From an evolutionary standpoint, any change, even positive, is perceived as a potential threat. The brain's amygdala, which governs the fear and threat detection, is hypersensitive to uncertainty. When we begin to shift a behavior, or rewire a belief, or step into a new role, the nervous system scans the unfamiliar terrain and often triggers a physiological state of alarm. Increased heart rate, muscle tension, mental doubt, and fog. It doesn't mean the path is wrong. It means the body is asking, are we sure this is safe? This is why transformation often feels destabilizing. According to the polyvagal theory developed by Stephen Porges, the nervous system interprets safety through predictability and attunement. Familiar pain is often safer than unfamiliar freedom. That is why many stay in unhappy, even toxic relationships for years. The sympathetic branch may activate either the flight or flight, or the dorsal may shut down in fawn or freeze, simply because the new behavior, though healthier, is untested. In short, your body isn't sabotaging you. It's trying to protect you based on old programming. The key is not to override the response, but to meet it with presence, So the body can begin to associate change not with danger, but with expansion. This is where we meet our inner fire. Not the kind that burns us out, but the kind that transmutes fear into clarity. From an astrological perspective, the first quarter phase marks a square, a moment of tension and activation. It is often described as a crisis of action. This is the moon phase that tests our commitment. It asks, do you really want this new way of being? Or were you just flirting with the idea of it? It's also where we begin to reframe resistance, not as a wall, but as a teacher. Every month, the first quarter moon arrives as a hinge point. It's not yet the full bloom of the cycle, but it's the moment where tension calls action into being. Astrologically, this is when the moon squares the sun, one of the most activating aspects. It signals that crisis of action, a time when we are challenged to move from intention into embodiment. And this is the path of progression. Whatever seed was planted at the new moon now begins to meet friction. And that friction is not failure. It is the initiation point. It's where our nervous system resists, our patterns surface, and we're given the choice: reinforce the old or lean into the new. Now, this month, that tension lives in the Libra archetype. Libra, often misunderstood as the peacekeeper, is in fact the diplomat of dynamic balance. When the first quarter moon lands in Libra, we're being asked to examine how we are showing up in relationships, not just with others, but with our own inner polarity. Are we giving and receiving in balance? Are we leading with presence or with performance? Are we protecting our hearts or avoiding the vulnerability required to evolve? This particular lunar square is especially potent because it echoes a larger collective cycle. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees 28 minutes of Aquarius in December 2020. That moment was a seed point, a once in a 20-year reset that ushered in a new era of collective responsibility, innovation, and structural reformation. It ended over 200 years of earth sign conjunctions and initiated a new elemental cycle through air, demanding we build less from control and more from coherence. And now, 5 years later, we're at that opening square of that larger 20-year cycle. What was seeded then, perhaps faint, subtle, still forming, is now being tested, not to break it, but to activate it. This first quarter moon in Libra is like a fractal of that wider tension. It asks, can your values withstand the push of reality? Can your vision of relational integrity hold its ground under emotional stress? Are you trying to keep the peace or actually live in balance? Frustrations or disruptions you're feeling now are not random. They are part of the unfolding choreography. They're showing you where your nervous system, your heart, and your relationships are not yet in harmony with what you're truly building. Let this tension teach you. Let it temper your will. Let it initiate you into a deeper level of inner justice, relational sovereignty, and emotional maturity. Because this moment, both in the moon lunar cycle and in the generational arc, is not about perfection. It's about alignment under pressure. And here are several real life examples of how this first quarter moon in Libra might manifest in your life, using both sides of the Libra archetype, both its desire for harmony, diplomacy, equality, and its tendency towards self-abandonment, people-pleasing, and leaning towards one extreme, and how this transit expresses itself through different houses in a birth chart. So just as a short recap, the Libra archetype themes are balance, imbalance, harmony or suppression, diplomacy or avoidance, co-creation or over-accommodation, beauty and fairness or fear of conflict. So this is how it might show up. For example, in the first house of self-identity, in its positive expression, you might have a new realization about how you can express your needs without conflict. You begin dressing or speaking in ways that feel more in balance with your inner self. In its shadow expression, you could be people-pleasing, and this could be so embedded that you don't know what you want anymore. You're reshaping your identity around keeping the peace, but losing the clarity. If this takes place in your second house of values and resources, in its positive expression, you could align your spending and earning with your values, perhaps choosing more ethical, relationally aware ways to make money. And in its shadow expression, you feel obliged to give away your time or money to others out of guilt or social pressure, which leads to resentment or instability. In the fourth house of home and inner world, in its positive expression, you could create a more harmonious home space, set boundaries lovingly with your family, and seek emotional fairness. In its shadow expression, you could be suppressing emotional needs just to keep the peace at home, avoiding the hard conversations or stuffing down past hurts. In the fifth house of creativity and expression, in its positive expression, you could collaborate creatively in a way that honors both your vision and someone else's, leading to a genuine co-creation. In its shadow expression, you dim your originality to gain approval, or find yourself over concerned with how your art and creativity is perceived. In the seventh house of one-to-one relationships, in its shadow expression, in its positive expression, you're able to ask for reciprocity in partnership or friendship, and you receive it. You could refine the way you show up in shared space. In the shadow expression, you attract conflict avoidant partners or become one yourself, mistaking avoidance for peace. And this is when power imbalances surface. In the 10th house of career and public life, in its positive expression, you make professional choices that reflect fairness and beauty, perhaps becoming a voice for justice or ethics in your field. And in its shadow expression, you overextend to seem agreeable or polished, diluting your leadership out of fear of being seen as too much or too assertive. If you found yourself resonating with how this first quarter moon in Libra might be activating specific areas of your life, Know that these are just glimpses, general reflections of a deeper, more personal story written in your exact birth chart. In my life journey consultation, we work one-on-one to explore exactly how these lunar and planetary energies are unfolding for you. This is where astrology becomes not just symbolic, but deeply practical mapping where tension is rising, where change is asking to take root, and how your own chart holds the keys to integrating it all with clarity and compassion. You can book directly through the Life Journey consultation link on my website at inchargewellbeing.com. So this moon asks, are you balancing assertion and attunement or collapsing into appeasement? Is your diplomacy rooted in authenticity or fear of disconnection? Are you maintaining outer peace at the cost of inner war? Libra teaches that true harmony requires truth, not just pleasantness. This part of the journey resonates with the Sagittarius 9 of the Elven star path that I talked about in the part 1 of this series. And it's the path of disciplined learning, engaging fully in training. Because true change requires full participation. Not perfection, not performance, but the willingness to be uncomfortable in service of coherence. We're not meant to sail through this part. We're meant to strengthen our capacity to stay present through it. So in part 2 of Rooted Rebirth, as we just discovered, we meet the fire of resistance, the moment in every transformation when discomfort rises and old patterns tighten their grip. The psychological practices I'm about to share with you for this session are designed to support that threshold, combining modern neuroscience with ancient embodied wisdom. From a neurological perspective, these tools help regulate the nervous system, they shift reactive loops, and restore a sense of agency through movement, breath, and reframing. From a shamanic lens, they mirror time-honored rituals used for ages to transmute fear into clarity, activating the body's inner fire as a sacred force of transformation. Together, they form a bridge, one foot in the science of the present, the other in the soul memory of the ancestral. So I'll give you 3 practices. The first practice is naming the resistance. What feels hard right now? What fear is this tension teaching? From a psychological foundation, this draws from cognitive behavioral therapy and affect labeling research. Because naming resistance helps move neural activity from the amygdala, the emotional reactivity, remember the flight, fight, fawn, or freeze reaction, to the prefrontal cortex, the relational processing. And it allows us to regain agency over fear-based responses. This is also a core part of trauma-informed inquiry. Name it to tame it. In shamanic traditions, naming is a sacred act of power. To name something is to call it into relationship, and often to begin transmuting it. Whether identifying a shadow, spirit, or wound, This step is mirrored in rites of passage where the initiate must name what they carry before they can release or integrate it. Naming resistance is the first spark, the flame of awareness, becoming aware of what we're carrying. And it transforms fear from an internal fog into a form that you can see and face. The second practice is somatic grounding through fire, shaking, tapping, vocalization. Because this is activation, not danger. From a psychological foundation, this practice is grounded in somatic experiencing, which was developed by Peter Levine, and the polyvagal theory developed, as I mentioned earlier, by Stephen Porges. And this involves gentle either shaking, tapping, or even pacing, walking around, which engages the body's natural discharge mechanism and allows the sympathetic energy to complete its arc. By reframing the feeling as activation rather than threat, you help the nervous system reclassify intensity as safe. In shamanic lineages, shaking rituals exist across various continents, from Kalahari Bushman trance dances to the dervish spinning, allowing the body to enter altered states and burn through psychic debris. The shaking isn't pathology, it's release. It's how fire clears space for the new. This is movement as flame, letting fire rise and burn what no longer serves without letting it consume the whole forest. The third practice is identifying the turn point. What small, courageous action can I take right now? From a psychological foundation, this echoes the solution-focused therapy and behavioral activation in trauma recovery. When the nervous system is overwhelmed, thinking small, micro actions restores agency. Even if the choice is to breathe, to focus on your breathing, to drink some water, to send a message, it can act as a neurobiological reset because action restores rhythm. In indigenous initiation paths, turning points are often ritualized. One small act as stepping across a threshold, naming a vow, lighting a candle, marks the crossing. The courage to choose action in the presence of fear is what transforms the initiate into the hero. And this is fire as will. A single ember, chosen and placed, can light the path forward. And actually, I'll give you another one, which is quite a favorite of mine. It's the fire breath practice, or some call it the lion's roar, where the breath of fire or lion's roars can be vocalized to move stagnant energy. From a psychological foundation, the breath of fire, known as the Kundalini, and in pranayama practices, it's a rhythmic, energizing breath that stimulates the sympathetic nervous system in a safe, deliberate way. This increases the alertness and helps release cortisol buildup. Meanwhile, the tone vocal release, the lion's roar, engages the vagus nerve and activates confidence through the laryngeal system, which is the psychological seat of expression. In In shamanic practices, sound as medicine is ancient. And this is actually something that modern science is rediscovering. For example, the 432 hertz frequency. But from Siberian throat singing to primal screams in tribal healing rites, sound was used to release stuck energies, call in power, and reconnect with animal instinct. The lion is a solar archetype, vocal, proud, clear. In ancient Egyptian temple practices, roaring or vocal breath was used to purge shadow from the body. This is the wildfire, untamed, expressive, radiant. The fire that asks, what truth inside of you is trying to break free through breath, sound, and presence? So you can pair any of these practices with a candle, physical movement, or a solar symbolism, the sunlight, gold, lion imagery, to deepen the embodiment of fire. I would encourage you to do one of these practices daily during this waxing moon phase to keep the energy moving towards the full moon. So remember that resistance is not a sign of threat. It's an invitation to become intimate with your own evolution. This part of the lunar cycle burns away illusion. It shows us what parts of our old self are still clinging to comfort. Let them come up. Meet them with presence. Choose alignment anyway. That is the turn of the page. And it always leads somewhere brighter. So if anything in this video resonated with you, if it stirred something, softened something, or simply reminded you that resistance is part of the path, I'd love for you to like, comment, or share it forward. When you engage, it helps this message reach others who might be right on the edge of their own turning point. And if you feel called to walk the rest of this lunar journey with me, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss what's coming next. Every bit of presence and participation amplifies the field. So thank you for being part of it. You can also download the Lunar Journal at inchargewellbeing.com for all the new prompts. And I'll see you soon for part 3, the Revelation Mirror. Blessings, and thank you for being here.